Yeah, it's the Al Travis Show, but we do the best we can to get the right people on here when we can. And we've been talking about this for as long as it's been going on, all this fraud and what can and can't happen, what's going to happen. And God plays in our lives, and I get the contact for Mike Stuart. You're saying, Mike Stuart? Who's Mike Stuart, Al? Mike Stuart is General Counsel, the OGC, for the Department of Health and Human Services for the United States. He is on the leading edge of what's going to happen as far as fraud here in Minnesota. And he said he would come on my program. Mr. Stewart, thank you very much for being here. I cannot tell you how much I'm happy you're here.
Listen, I appreciate it very much. And I wish we were talking about a different subject, right? Just Minnesota nice. But this is a big issue. It's a big issue for the country. And it's got to be sorted through. But I appreciate the time to be here.
I don't want to be mean to you because I like that sentiment, really do. But you're the General Counsel for Health and Human Services. Everywhere you go, it's this kind of thing. You lawyers don't go where you aren't going to sue somebody. I mean, when do you get to say, happy to be here, I'm suing you? When you ever get to use that in a positive sense? I'm sorry for being here, why I'm here. That's what you do.
So I'll tell you a little bit about my background for folks who don't know anything about me.
There you go.
So I'm a former United States attorney, and I'm the first former United States attorney to ever be asked to be the General Counsel of HHS. And just so the people listening to this and watching this know, I have about 700 lawyers that work for me. Why?
Oh, wow.
Because we represent the FDA, the CDC, National Institutes of Health, CMS, Medicare, Medicaid, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the Administration for Children and Families, and I could go on for probably 20 minutes in terms of who we represent here. It's over a third of the federal budget is right here at HHS, a third. And you think about it, it's $2 trillion a year just for Medicare and Medicaid. Huge numbers.
It is, and we obviously understand that in Minnesota because it can also go south when it's too big of money. But let me ask you this, sir. How long have you been doing this? When did you get put in this spot?
Yeah, so I was confirmed. I was asked by the president and his team. I had to be Senate confirmed. In fact, I was a U.S. attorney, had to be Senate confirmed that time too. And so I'm the only West Virginian, not that it matters for your listeners, that has been nominated by President Trump twice and confirmed by the United States Senate twice. And in the entire history of West Virginia, my parents like this number, I'm the only West Virginian in the history of the state to be nominated by an American twice for two different positions in the administration.
Oh,
so pretty neat stuff. Listen, I'm a guy who, just by background, my dad was a coal miner, and my grandfather's coal miners. And remember, I grew up in a little white house in a holler, literally, we call it a holler, with a creek.
Yeah.
We call them cricks back where I'm at. And it ran orange from acid mine drainage, literally. And there was well water that was polluted. We used to carry gallon jugs of water in. And so I say it all the time, I'm one of the most blessed people I've ever met. And I think that God's placed me in this position to work as hard as I can to try to help the American people.
What I guess I want to get to then, of all those people you employ, do they stay when the boss comes and goes? I mean, depending on what president, do they stay? Because I'm going to lead the witness with you a little bit. See that lawyer term I just threw at you? I'm going to lead the witness a little bit, sir. All this fraud that we've got with Health and Human Services here in Minnesota has been going on so long. I find it hard to believe people higher up even than Minnesota didn't know about it. So how do you go about when you walk in a year ago and say, I got to flush this out from 8-10 years ago?
Yeah, it's more than 8 or 10 years. This thing's been going on for a long time, and a lot of folks need to be held accountable here. And my real focus are the beneficiaries and the victims of this. It's Minnesota taxpayers, Minnesota families. It's Aunt Ethel, who desperately needs an oxygen tank because she's suffering from emphysema. It's little Johnny that truly needs that care program while he's in school and can't afford it. And so what we're doing, and I'm a prosecutor by nature, and it might make some folks nervous in Minnesota. It ought to make the American people pretty comfortable. But so I'm a prosecutor by nature. What are we doing here at HHS right now beyond just focusing on fraud? I'm building out the greatest, most aggressive fraud effort in the history of this institution. I just hired the former U.S. attorney from Western District of PA, Scott Brady. And if you remember that horrible Tree of Life case, that synagogue that was shot up, I just brought him on, and he's not the last U.S. attorney who's going to join me. But what do? We start digging in. We focus on data. I've been to Minnesota already. I've met with U.S. Attorney Rosen. The day after he lost some folks in his office, I was there to tell him I've done this before. Prosecuted over half the state Supreme Court in West Virginia. I didn't care whether they were Democrat or Republican. In fact, one of the chief targets was a Democrat, one was a Republican. Didn't care. I'm a fraud buster. And so I was built for this time.
I'm excited to have you 100%. I mean, I don't think I'm going to think I'm hearing anything new here. Listen to me, but I'm glad you're here. So far, we've seen, I want to say it's 8 people get found guilty of fraud in Minnesota. We talked $9 billion. We've got 8 people. All of that was feeding our futures from, 2020. We've seen nobody with all this new set of fraud, autism fraud, the daycare fraud, and all that. We've seen no one get arrested or even charged.
Well, I'll say that those cases are coming. Those cases are coming. And so I'm going to be an active participant with your U.S. attorney. And I know how to run these cases. My team knows how to run these cases. And so he's not going to be on his own up there on these cases. He's very capable, and he's got a great office up there. But this is going to be the biggest effort Minnesota's ever seen. And let me assure your viewers, your listeners, I want to hold politicians accountable for aiding and abetting this conduct for a very long time. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, you know who's in charge of investigating Medicaid fraud in Minnesota today by statute? Keith Ellison. Who was Keith Ellison meeting with, taking checks with years ago? You think this is news to him that there was Medicaid fraud? But he did nothing about it. Nothing. And so
that's back to your predecessors, right? People let this go. I'm going to use the autism thing. Somebody gets a hold of somebody from Minnesota, calls Human Services at the United States Department and said, hey, we got a great idea. Autism. We can help autism. Really? What do you need? $3 million. Okay, we'll start there. Then they set up a program, sir. Your kid doesn't have to have autism. There's no doctor saying he's got autism. The guy who sets up the clinic, Al's Autism Center, he doesn't have to be a teacher. He doesn't have to be a doctor. Your kid doesn't have a diagnosis you're in, and your parents in Minnesota can shop your kid around from the Autism Center to Autism Center and getting a little kickback. And none of that's, according to our OLA here in Minnesota, seems to be illegal. And somebody at the United States Department of Human Services said, sounds like a great plan. It went from $3 million to $200 million in 4 years. There's no way they didn't know about it. And my point is, no one's been taken account for 8, 10 years, whatever it's been. Can you go back that far and get them? Because I'm more concerned. Statute of limitations went out on that bad boy. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, no. It's called conspiracy to defraud the American people. And so when you look at a conspiracy case, those statutes of limitation, not to go down a boring path of talking statute and the way the legal process works, if there was an ongoing conspiracy, right, this thing's been around for a long time. They knew it was there. We'll pierce through any of those statutes of limitation. I can assure you that there's going to be a very deep dive on a whole bunch of politicians in Minnesota and across the country for that matter. These things are not new. Like we knew back in the teens of the 2000s, this fraud was coming. And so I say, gosh, shame on those folks who asked for these dollars that didn't need these monies and were ripping us off. Shame on the American government for letting this happen for so long and not holding folks accountable. But also shame on the Keith Ellisons and the Tim Waltzes. They've been sitting in their seats since 2019, 2020.
We've been doing this show that so long, sir. Yes, I know exactly what we've been talking about it. If they turned the radio on, they knew what was going on. We have culpability with the papers and the press in this state, in my opinion, but I have no doubt they knew it was going on. I think the idea is no one's going to do anything. We've run this state.
Well, we're going to do something about it. Let me point out something else I think your listeners and viewers might like, is that when I prosecuted those state Supreme Court justices, I had them arrested at their houses. And so I didn't let them self-report and come in the basement door to the federal courthouse. Yeah. My view is Republican, Democrat, rich or poor, you get treated the same. I can tell you that we're right now putting together the greatest partnership between the Department of Justice, the Office of Inspector General, and this Office of General Counsel that we have ever seen. And we're digging in through data. And it may take us a few months to hold folks accountable, but a few months is far better than a few years. I think you're going to see some perp walks here, not too far down the road, in which we hold folks who were at the highest levels. In fact, I look at the Office of Inspector General in Minnesota back in 2019, 2020. I think it was, is it Carolyn Ham or Carolyn Fry? And then you follow this guy named Bobby, whatever his last name was, that came in right after. These folks knew what was happening. There were reports as to what was happening, and guess what they did? Nothing. They did nothing. And so we're going to hold every one of these people accountable.
I got to go to break quick if you don't mind, sir, because I want to get you some quotes on that, because I like what you're talking about, perp walks, as we've been talking about on this show. 8 people so far is all I know that's ever been held accountable. I'm going to ask you to think about this on the break real quick. The problem being is, if this happens 3 months from now, we'll be 5 months from election, and everyone's going to say, you guys did it because it was politically motivated, and they're going to scare you off. We'll talk about that coming up in a second. I can't believe how lucky I'm to have him. He is the General Counsel for the Department of Health and Human Services. He's Mike Stuart. More with him right after this. I've got a Mike Stuart, General Counsel for the Department of Health and Human Services. He's coming to Minnesota. He is saying that people are going to be held accountable. I literally was having a cigar with a friend yesterday, and we were chatting about the idea that we are in the mentality now, Joe Average guys, that if you have enough clout, you bring up the Ellisons, you bring up the Walzes, the lieutenant governor's running for the Senate job now, and people who should have known what was going on are going to throw their hands up and say, I just happen to be bad at my job. What are you going to do about that? Just don't vote for me next time. There are commissioners in charge of these departments that their entire job is to look and see what's going on, and like 3 million to 200 million. I had no idea. I'm just bad at being the commissioner. And my buddy and I were smoking, think they're all going to walk. Is there a legal precedent that these people can be held accountable for stupidity?
Well, there wasn't stupidity here. Listen, this was a criminal conspiracy, and we're going to approach this. Listen, I'm an adult who has a strong legal background. I've put politicians behind bars many times. Okay. One of my partners in this, Scott Brady, that former U.S. attorney from the Western District of PA, we have a deep bench of experience here. So does the Department of Justice. And I'd say, unfortunately for these guys, that day is coming when they're going to be held accountable. They're going to have to stand in front of a judge, and they're either going to have to plea to some charges that are very bad, or they're going to go through a long, painful for the state of Minnesota trial in which they're going to have to be found innocent or guilty by a jury of their peers of their conduct over this long period of time. You can't let this type of money, we're not talking a few $1 million. We're talking the viability of Minnesota. Viability of Minnesota. If all of these dollars have to be recollected from the federal government that were fraudulently ripped off from Minnesota taxpayers, the American taxpayers, Minnesota can't pay this, right? We're going to end up at Congress asking for a bailout of everything that's happened, because these numbers aren't, I've seen some of these stories in the past where it was 900 million, a billion. We're up to $19 billion potentially in Minnesota. And as I understand it, your rainy day fund's about $3.2 billion. You don't have the money to pay this.
And it's back to, they've been doing it so long. What are they going to make? I believe the powers that be don't think there's any repercussions. And I would ask you this: since it's federal funds, right down to, I know there's one because the Office of a Legislative Auditor came up with this guy. He wrote a check for $672,000 to a company. They just put in an invoice, didn't even say what it's for, but he wrote the check. And within the week, he quit his job with us and is became an independent contractor, consultant for that same company. Evidently in Minnesota, there's no law against that. But to me, it smells so stinking high to heaven. I want to see his tax return and see how much he actually declares, how much he made from that deal. But is there because it's federal money, is it a federal case? Is there laws? Because Minnesota evidently doesn't have any.
Right. So I am certain, and I'm not a Minnesota lawyer, but I can guarantee you there's something on the books that says that's illegal, right? There's something on the books that says that's illegal. From a federal standpoint, though, there's a whole bunch illegal about what happened right there, especially with federal program. We take this seriously, and these won't be the first politicians that go to prison. And so what I'd say to the folks watching and listening, I'd say, come forward, tell us what you know, help us find these things. I believe in citizen journalists and citizens. They're better situated than us to be able to see this fraud, and we take it seriously. And so We urge them to come forward and help us in this process.
How do they do then, Mr. Stuart? How would someone not feeling comfortable in the state government, because this is what's going on, go to you? How does someone get a hold of your office? Is it online? What do they do to say, hey, I know this went on?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways they can do it. But I first tell people the FBI is a great resource, and there's an FBI hotline. I don't have that number on the top of my head.
That's easy to look up.
FBI hotline is terrific, though. And let me tell you, the FBI, I was one of those folks, like I was not a creature of government. When I was U.S. attorney, I didn't believe they actually followed up on all these things. They actually do. They follow up on all of them. And so if we want to get to the bottom of fraud, if we want to help the people of Minnesota get past this terrible chapter in Minnesota history, it's the people of Minnesota that have to rally and say, no more. We're not going to tolerate this any longer. And so I'm going to be up there a lot. My partners are going to be up there a lot. This isn't going away. There's accountability in the air is what I want to say. And they can either help us get to the bottom of this, or we're going to get to the bottom of it ourselves. I think the people of Minnesota are depending on it.
I'm running up against the hard stop here, sir. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. And I mean that. I mean, we're just a little small radio station here in outstate Minnesota. You did this for me. I appreciate it. I open invitation. You get to Minnesota. You find something out. You want the people to know about it. You have your people tell me. We'll get you back on. I appreciate you a ton, sir. I honestly do.
And listen, I wouldn't mind coming up and with you doing some sort of open forum where we can hear from folks. And it might be great. You talk about this being great. That might even be better. Let's do it live.
We'll make that happen, sir. I'll work with the radio stations I'm with. We'll make something happen. I appreciate you. Thank you for doing this for me.
Thank you for having me.
Just tuning in. Be sure to catch it on any of these radio stations. Get it on our YouTube page. Mike Stuart, General Counsel for the United States Department of Health and Human Services, right here in the Al Travis Show. More after this. Don't go anywhere.